All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Figma Make office hours. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. Just want to give some people time to trickle in. So while you're waiting, feel free to get some water, coffee, tea. I personally have my coffee here on me because it's morning in San Francisco. But yeah, feel free to get comfortable. We'll start in a couple of minutes. I'm Anna. I'm a designer advocate at Figma, and today I'm joined by Holly. Holly, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. I'm Holly. I am the PM on Figma Make, and we're so excited to be chatting with you guys today. So
Yeah,
thanks for joining us.
yeah. We also have a couple of teammates who are working behind the scenes to help answer questions as well during the live stream. So hopefully we can kind of help answer as many questions as possible, share some best practices with you all during this time. Yeah, in the meantime, though, make sure to set your chat to everyone. I think the default is hosts and panelists, but just to make sure that people can see any thoughts, reactions, things you want to share from your personal experience using Figma Make, definitely drop that into the chat. Yeah, we have a great number of people joining today, which is always exciting. We've also been doing a series of these office hours live streams every week. I believe next week will be sites. So if you want to learn more about sites and code layers, definitely check that out. And also, we'll make sure to send the recording to this live stream for everyone later on. So be sure to take a look at your email. If you want to rewatch things or if you have to hop out in the middle, you can revisit any of the content that you missed. So we're at 2 minutes after now, so I think we're ready to get started. Quickly, before we dive in to the main content, uh, just a couple of housekeeping things. So yes, this session will be recorded. We'll make sure to send it to your emails shortly after. We will have time to answer questions after we do some demoing. So please use the Q&A section of the Zoom toolbar to ask your questions. This is the best way for us to keep track of questions coming in. And we'll have teammates that will also be answering some of them in the chat, but some of them will also be answering live as well at the end. Make sure to set your chat to everyone just so that everyone can see your thoughts and reactions. And of course, be kind. This is the link to our code of conduct. But yeah, we just want this to be a safe and positive space for everyone. With that, I'm ready to dive into content. Passing over to Figma Make product manager, Holly Lee, to talk to us a bit about Figma Make.
Cool. Thank you, Anna. Well, I hope most of you have had the chance to play with Make. It's on 100% of full seats. But in case you haven't, just going to share a couple slides about what the product is, and then we'll go into some demos. So Make is a new tool from Figma. It allows you to generate essentially 0 to 1 apps by just prompting or attaching designs and prompting on top of them. So it takes your designs and brings them to life, adding interactions and backing them with code. So they're functional and playable and interactive. And we're really excited about this for a bunch of key reasons. The first is just that we know that there are so many ideas that people often have that they really just can't validate or can't explore. And with Make, we're excited about the ability for you to quickly test a bunch of ideas just as easily, as typing a couple words on top of your design and exploring them that way. It's also, we've already seen from some customers and some users, an amazing and powerful new way to get validation from the rest of your team and for everyone to experience a design instead of just having to look at it. Secondly, we're really excited about the ways that it actually helps bring more craft to your designs. So now, instead of just designing the button, you can actually kind of design that interaction of that button. Instead of just designing the flow as static screens, you can actually design what that flow should actually feel like in your product. And we continue to just be amazed at the ways that y'all are all kind of leveling up what you're creating in Figma with Figma Make. And the third thing we're really excited about is handoff. We've heard loud and clear from a lot of designers and developers alike that sometimes handing off designs it feels like you want to give it more context. You want to give the developer a little bit more information. And sometimes it's just hard to do that. So we're really excited and we're continuing to grow in this area with Make about how it can really be a really powerful tool for handoff and making that flow all the more seamless between designers and their PMs, their developers, and the rest of the team. So a lot more to share here. We're going to talk a little bit about Make Roadmap at the very end, but just a high level introduction. So again, for those of you who haven't seen Make, one of the really cool parts of it is that it's a tool that's built within Figma. So all you have to do to breathe life to a design is just start with an existing design. All you have to do is copy it and then paste it into the Make prompt box to start working off of it. We're also introducing more direct manipulation tools. So in your preview in Make, you can already start to update fonts, change colors, change padding, and we're going to continue adding capabilities to this as we go. And the last part, is because it's all in Figma, it means that, you inherit all of the team sharing permissions and all of these team workflows that you already know and love. So everything is multiplayer by default. Your team can already join you within your files and riff with you. And you don't have to worry about external sharing and all of that jazz. It all lives within Figma. So all of the sharing permissions you already know, Figma Make inherits. So happy to answer more questions about Make as we go along, but now Anna's going to show us some really amazing demos.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Yes, let's dive into actually seeing what Make looks like. Um, so as Holly mentioned, one of the really great things about Figma Make is that you can start with an existing Figma design and use that to start building your prototype in Make. So here I've got this design for this project screen as part of this collab web app where people can share various science projects. And so to create a make, you can either do that through, if I click here in my design file in the Figma menu, go to File and New Make. If I'm starting from a project, I can also go to that Create screen and then select Make as well. And yeah, that's going to create a new Make file for me. Looking at the file, we've got a couple of different ideas for various kinds of things that you could build using Figma Make. But also you can see here at the bottom, this is both where I can enter in my prompts to describe my idea, as well as paste the links to my Figma designs. So going back to my design, I'm just going to select the frame, do Command C to copy it, and Command V to paste it in to my prompt. I'm going to go ahead and also briefly describe my idea. So I'll just say like build an interactive prototype of the projects section of the collab web app and hit enter. When you're bringing your designs into your prompts, you can attach up to 3 frames. If that's not enough to encompass your prototype, so for instance, if you got a bunch of different kinds of screens going on, you can always feel free to add additional frames in additional follow-up prompts that you have as you build out your prototype. But we can see here, Make is doing some quick reasoning about what exactly it's going to build as it's looking at my design and my prompt. And we can see here it's starting to actually build out the code. So in this space here, the code is going to be what actually powers the prototype. And when that prototype is ready for me to interact with and see, how it looks, I'll be entering that preview tab to actually see how it is and see what kinds of adjustments that I want to make. Besides pasting links to your Figma designs, you can also see down here, there's an option to attach an image. You can also browse through your various Figma assets as well. But really the simplest way, in my opinion, is just going to that frame and then copying and pasting it into the prompt. So while that's going, I'm just going to go ahead and drag this out. And we can talk a little bit about how you can set yourself up for success when it comes to actually setting up your designs in a way that's going to make prototyping easier. So because Figma Make is able to actually access my design, it can access a lot of information about my design as well. And one of the ways then that you can really help create a prototype and make that responds the way that you want it to is by doing things like utilizing auto layout. So for instance, in this particular design here, I've got, multiple different frames. They have auto layout applied to them. So I've kind of already decided, how do I want this to respond based on the changes in the display size, based on how maybe if I've got this open, I can resize my screen. I want these cards to responsively resize as well. And so when you have that information already in your design, Make is able to see that information and apply that to the prototype that it's building. Just quickly looking at an example I already have spun up, using the same design but without auto layout, you can see here that when I'm resizing my window, these cards are just getting cut off. There's no kind of responsivity built into these cards at all. And it's because I didn't have that kind of information in my original design. Another thing that really helps when setting up your design for success before bringing it into Make is to make sure that you're naming your layers. This is a really helpful way to create a shared language between yourself and Make. So, if for whatever reason I wanted to update like one of these like cards here, it's possible for something, right? Like this dashboard, there's multiple different cards. If I say I want you to adjust the card corner radius, it might not know exactly what I mean. And so when you have your layers named, and you refer to the particular layer by its name that's given, that's going to help Make know what specifically you're talking about when you're asking it to do something for you. Now in this design down here, this is an example of the same thing, but I don't have good layer names. You've got those kind of really long default names that pop up every time you create a new frame. So if you don't want to go through the tedious task of renaming your layers, you can just go down to, I'll also do just command / to quickly access the tools, but you could do rename layers here, one of the AI beta features, select that, and then it's running, and you can see here it's automatically renamed those layers that were frame plus a long string of numbers. There's also an additional AI tool if you don't have auto layout applied, which is suggest auto layout. So you can also utilize that in cases where you've got a frame where there's no auto layout applied and you want to quickly have that done before bringing to Make, just so that your design is responsive. So those are a couple of tips on just how to set up your designs before bringing them into Make to set yourself up for success. Also naturally too, if you have component libraries that you can pull from, the more you utilize those components, the better, because generally design systems teams are going to be putting a lot of thought into the responsivity of these components, making sure that the layers are properly named. So utilizing components is probably already going to help ensure that your design has good hygiene before bringing it into Figma Make. So with that, let's go back and check in on this design that I had. Let's bring it back into this window and let's full screen this. Cool. So yeah, I just gave it a prompt, build an interactive prototype. When you ask it to build things that are interactive, Make is going to automatically add certain things. So I didn't specify that I wanted these cards to have this hover interaction, but it added it by default for me. Let's quickly look and see also how this looks when I'm responding. So if I resize my window, you can see the cards are responsively resizing, which is pretty great and definitely better than this other example that I had. Let's see here, where we did not have any auto layout. It's just cutting things off. So just applying auto layout made a world of a difference in terms of the responsivity of my output in this prototype. For situations where you've got a pretty basic screen, so I mean, having a screen full of different cards with information is a pretty standard design practice. and it's something that you can generally get in one shot when asking Figma Make. In the case of more complex designs, though, it might make sense to split things up. So if you've got, for instance, you're trying to design a prototype that has multiple different screens you're navigating between, splitting those up into separate prompts is going to be really helpful to not overload Figma Make with too many things you're trying to get it to do. And even for screens that are really complex, it might even make sense to break those up and start tackling it section by section. But I'm going to open this back to full screen and just show a bit of a more complicated example that I've got here. So this is also from a single prompt. I just asked it to implement this interactive dashboard for the Colab web app. And looking here, it's already added some different hover effects for various things. I've also got this tooltip that was reflected in my design here, and then we've also got this table of various different rows. So this is looking pretty good. It's not perfect though. So how do you go about, adjusting your prototype and Make to fit your specific vision? So I'm going to minimize this zoom view. All right, so there's a couple of different ways. First, we always try to encourage people to use the point and edit tool to make any kinds of edits. This is going to be your fastest way to make edits. So I'm going to select that, and you can see when I go over here, it's going to allow me to select different parts of my prototype. So in this example, I actually want these badges to be positioned lower. So I'm going to select on that. And then you can see here, there's a couple of different things I can do. I could change the background color, the corner radius, and then there's spacing. And then you can also split it up to specific sides for the padding and margin. So maybe I want to actually adjust this because I want this to sit more aligned to the bottom. So I'm going to do that. That looks pretty good. I also think that these little like subheaders here are a little bit too small. So I'm going to select on these text layers. For text, you can see that you can change the font, the color, you can change the font size, you can make it bold, italic, or underlined, as well as change alignment and spacing as well. So in this case, I just want to, bump it up to 12. So I'm going to select each of these and make that adjustment. Cool. And then looks like I have another funky thing going on here where for whatever reason, it's added 2 drop-down carrots to my drop-downs. So this isn't a change that I can make right now using this little toolbar that pops up with select and edit. But on the right-hand side of this toolbar, you can see there's this go to source. And when I click on that, that's going to take me to where this thing lives in the code that Figma Make generated for me. And looking here, I can see, okay, we've got these different elements. And then I believe that it's these little chevrons here that I need to remove. So I'm going to select that and delete it for both of them. Let's go back to the preview. Looks like I missed oh, there we go. And you can see now I only have one single chevron for each one, which is pretty great. So we're going to continue to expand on the kinds of different edits that you can do with the select and edit tool with the toolbar. But if there's some things that you can't achieve there, you can also try going to where it exists in code and making those edits from there. Those are going to be really fast ways to make edits to your Figma Make. But of course, if there's other things that you wanted to change that either you can't do with select and edit toolbar or you don't feel comfortable making the edit in code, you can always continue to follow up with additional prompts. And if there's something specific I want to change, like, maybe for instance, like for the rows here, I think I've got like this gray colored hover, but actually want it to be a light blue. So I can still use the point and edit to select just the specific thing that I want, the area of what I want to change. Just to help Make know what exactly I'm talking about, especially if I have multiple tables. If there's just one table where I want to edit the row hover state, I can prompt that. So I'm just going to say, change the um, project row hover state to a light blue background. And then, yeah, it'll do some thinking and go about making that change. Cool. So, yeah, for something like this, it's a little bit more of a complex screen, right, than the last one that we built. Um, so making those kinds of edits through point and edit, through editing and code, and then through follow-up prompts is going to be the different ways that you can kind of help follow up. And of course, you can always attach additional designs. Like if for whatever reason it's pretty far from what I wanted with the table, I could always follow up by attaching the specific design for that table as well for it to reference. But let's just see how it works. Yeah, it's changed it to a light blue, which is pretty awesome. And then one thing I also want to remember that I mentioned is, for instance, here, right? Like maybe I want to change the project title to bold. You can see when I select on one of them, it's selecting all of these as well. So when I make the change, this project title, it bolded all of them. Let's also make it underlined just to make it a bit more of an obvious of a change. But you can see here, if you've got like duplicate elements of the same thing, Figma Make can recognize that. And so rather than me clicking on every single project title in each row, I just make the edit to one of them and it automatically applies the edit to the rest. So it's pretty awesome. And then, whenever you're ready to publish or share your prototype with others, you can always click the share button to share with people on your team, whether through a link or inviting them to the file. You can also publish to a public website if you want people maybe outside of your org to play around with it. So yeah, those are some pretty awesome things that you can do there. And just for the sake of saving time, I'm not going to build out this full thing, but here is an example of a full functioning version of this. So I've got a little bit more of a realistic bar chart down here. We have the ability to filter these things by months and also by different categories for the different projects. And something that's really cool too is that in my original design, I just had placeholder project names. It wasn't real data I was using for my design work. But to really kind of test and see how this would look with realistic data, I actually prompted Figma Make to generate 200 projects to populate this prototype with based on the projects that were already given. So if we go into the code section, you can see here we've got this project data file. And here it's basically has here's the format. We've got an ID, a name, a date, a category, and a status for each one. And then it's also pulled from my existing project names, and it created these templates. And then it had various locations, and then it basically randomly generated using those different parameters, all those various projects to populate my design with. So that's why here, we've got a very realistic functioning bar chart and these filters that apply to both the bar chart and to this rows. And then when we go to view all, in this next screen too, we've got all this data is pretty realistic here. Yeah, I think this is a little awkward because I didn't do any auto layout sizing. So the resizing is a bit strange here, but yeah, all very realistic look and feel, which is helpful for me to know what kinds of changes that I need to make when I'm actually able to see what a design looks like when it is populated with a bunch of different projects. And then, yeah, being able to add a bunch of different filter options, oldest, alphabetical, pretty cool stuff. All right. So besides, turning your designs into these high fidelity functioning prototypes, something else that you could do with Figma Make is also using it for other things. Maybe it's refining micro interactions or animations. And so this is a loading screen that I created. This was just through 2 prompts. So I pasted a link to this radical design and I told it that I wanted it to create looping animations where these various icons are going to go from 0 to 100% opacity. And then I also had it animate the icons to sporadically rotate. And yeah, this was just like a great way for me to kind of test out a potential like loading screen animation. You can also use Figma Make for things besides, creating high fidelity prototypes. Like you're using AI, you can use it to do things that are maybe time consuming for you to manually do. So for instance, in my collabs dashboard, I actually want to make sure I'm deleting. Let's clear out our variables. So I've got no variables here. Maybe I just like did some design explorations. I didn't really create a standardized color palette for me to utilize. But now I want to bring that into my file. So what I did here is I basically pasted the link to, I pasted the frame of my project screen. I asked it to extract 6 core colors from the design and display those colors in their hex codes in the preview. So it gave me these core colors plus these additional colors that it found. And then I followed up by asking it to utilize Tailwind CSS and then a design that I had for a table to display color variables. I wanted to use those hex values it extracted and generate color scales that went from 100 to 1,000. And then also to give me the option to export them as a JSON. This is a specific format that's used by the import export variables plugin. So I wanted to take those colors, create these primitive variable color scales, and then allow me to export that data as a JSON. So I could then use the export import variable plugin to bring it in. So we can see here, these are the color scales that it created for all those different colors it identified. If I click this button, it's exporting it out for me. And then I can go back to my design file. Let's go to the quick actions to access our plugins, variable importer exporter. Let's import that. I'm going to choose a file. I think it was called collab color scales and bring it in. And then looking here, it's brought in all those color scales, which was from Figma Make referencing this single screen design. So this would have taken me a pretty long time to try to do myself. So there's things that you can use Figma Make for that could also just generally help you save time. Or we even had like some people create examples of if you had like an animation, asking Figma Make to export like the specs for the animation to help with handing over to an engineer and communicating to them the details of an animation. So there's a lot of different things that you can use with Figma Make besides just turning a design into a high fidelity prototype. And then I know a lot of my examples have been web-based, but you can also look into building mobile prototypes as well. So I've got like this World Peas example for the shopping experience. We've got these little micro interactions. I can go to my cart and I can edit the value of things. And I know we've used this World Peas example in the past for our advanced prototyping demos, but this is achievable in advanced prototyping. But you probably all have run into the issue where it's like, okay, input fields, you got to like manually set that up. You have to have each keyboard typing is going to append a variable to a string. So I'm just going to enter in some information here for shipping. So yeah, input fields automatically, so much easier in Figma Make. And also, you can have it put in like logic here. Like if you have certain like qualifications for a password or for an email, like you can do that. Here, I asked Figma Make to make sure that the zip code is a real one. So if I do this, it's going to give me an error here, but 94114, that's a real San Francisco zip code. So pretty awesome. Go to payment. I'll just type in fake information here. Okay. Looks good. And then it's also updated information here based on what I typed in the prior screens. So yeah, able to also create both for web, but also for mobile prototypes as well. And yeah, input fields are just so much easier. And just in general, I think like creating prototyping things out is going to be a lot faster for people, especially if you're not familiar with how to use variables in advanced prototyping and certain things like some logic, input fields can be a lot more time consuming if you try to build prototypes in Figma design files. So yeah, those are kind of all the different demos that I have. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Holly to talk a bit about some of our future plans with Figma Make. Oh, one last thing I remembered. Here's a quick summary of best practices I covered. So start with good file hygiene. Um, Utilizing auto layout, using layer names to define those layers. It's going to help create a shared language. You can utilize Figma's existing AI features for rename layers and for suggesting auto layout for that. Also, investing quality prompts is going to help as well. Even just me saying I want it to make it interactive allowed me to create prototypes that already had hover states defined. So the more specific you are in your vision, um, the more that you communicate that, the more that Figma Make is going to implement something that aligns with what you're specifically looking for. Um, we'll also make sure to follow up with some resources on just how to build quality prompts. One of my teammates actually created a Figma Make a GPT to help you compose better prompts. So we'll make sure to share that as a follow-up resource. Yeah, for things that are really complex, break it into manageable chunks. If you have multiple screens that you're navigating between in a prototype, I would advise against putting all of those into a single prompt. Just try tackling one at a time. It's going to help prevent Figma Make from becoming overwhelmed with trying to do too many things at once. And it might actually be a bit easier to just get each screen perfect each time you give it as a single prompt rather than lumping everything together and then trying to make minor tweaks over multiple prompts. Also using different editing strategy, definitely use the point and edit when possible or editing in code. That is going to be the fastest way to make changes to your prototype. But of course, you can always continue to follow up with additional prompts and attaching additional designs. Also integrating realistic data into your make, like you can ask it to allow you to upload a JSON of information, or you can ask it to just generate information for you based on, like, for instance, in my collabs, I just said, okay, utilizing like the projects, we each have an ID, a name, a status, a date, like just generate 200 projects for me to fill out the tables. And it was able to do that. And then also turning Make into a handoff assistant and just in general, like using it to just help do things that are time consuming, whether it is like having some specs around like an animation or like to actually like take your designs and create full color scales from that. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it besides converting designs into prototypes. And then, yeah, I also want to give a shout out to this essential tips for using Figma Make. It was written by someone on my team, and it's an amalgamation of just input and tips from people internally who've been using Figma Make a lot. But we'll also make sure to share the article as well in our follow-up email with the recording. Okay, now I'm done. I will hand it over to Holly to talk about yeah, what's coming up next.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for those amazing demos and those best practices. Um, the Q&A section is going off. I'm reading them. We're going to answer a lot of these live, and I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered by what I'm about to share. So, really excited. You know, it's been about a month since we launched Figma Make, and the team is relentlessly working on a bunch of improvements and new abilities coming soon. The first is that by the end of the month, you will be able to generate your makes in the look and feel of a design library. So I know that there are a ton of questions about design system support. We hear you loud and clear. It's top of mind for us. It's our number one priority. We're working on it. The baby version of that is going to be this feature that we release at the end of June. It will essentially it will allow Make to extract things like colors and fonts from a design system and then use those in their makes. As part of that, I see a lot of you have asked questions about how can I, you know, give specific instructions to my make that I don't want to have to keep reminding it to do that. As part of that feature, there's going to be a guidelines file in every single make file that you'll be able to add your own rules to, your own preferences, and that will essentially be a persistent way that you can give instructions to your make. And so now, at least, even if you start with no existing designs, even if you just say, like, make me a to do app, right? If you have a design system attached to it or like a library attached, it will at least use the fonts and the colors and some of that kind of basic aesthetic look of your design system. Now, we know that that's not fully the design system support that we all want in Make. And so I can't share too many details about timelines for this, but we do plan on supporting your full Figma design system in Make. Um, and further down the line, the ability for you to not only use components from your design system in Make, but for updates to go both ways. Or sorry, not both ways, but for updates to your library components to be reflected in your Make. And that's a longer term, a harder technical challenge, but it's on our radar and we're working on it. Going back to things that are coming sooner, a lot of you have also asked questions about mobile preview. So Anna showed a great demo of, world peas in a mobile screen. You can today just prompt Make to say, hey, here's a mobile design, keep things to be mobile dimensions. But to make that even easier on you, in a couple weeks, we will be releasing the ability for you to just toggle between desktop and mobile, and be able to see your prototypes that way. A lot of you have also been asking about best prompts. How do I prompt better? Are there best practices for prompts? How do we make that easier? And so we are also releasing a feature called, AI prompt supporter, AI prompt expansion. There will be a button coming soon in your prompt box that will take any prompt you have and just automatically add detail, add specification so that you don't have to really lift a finger at all. And then, you can obviously edit that longer and more robust prompt before you send it. But we just hope that makes your life a little bit easier. And we've heard loud and clear that users are already doing this. They're taking prompts into Claude or ChatGPT to make them better. And now we're bringing all of that within Make. A lot of you have been asking about databases and APIs. We're also going to be releasing a Supabase integration in July. And then the biggest thing that I think everyone has been asking for in the Q&A is, when can I bring Make back into Figma design? And that is a loaded question, and I will break it up into roughly two pieces. There's the first ability to literally have your Make prototypes live at least side by side with your designs so that you don't have to be switching between tabs, so that you can just share one design file with your team, and they can see your designs and your sticky notes and your makes all in one canvas. That is coming soon. That's our first step. But we also know that a lot of you want to fully be able to edit your make prototypes like you edit in Figma design. And that is very, very top of mind for us. We're cooking on some, exciting technical developments that will make that possible. And so we are sprinting to build that. And that is also coming soon. But the first step is you will be able to have makes live at least side by side in Figma design, even if you can't fully edit them and have canvas interactions natively the same way, but we're working on that. Okay, I know there are a lot of questions that we still didn't get to in the Q&A, so excited to address those shortly. Oh, Anna, you're muted.
All right, cool. I'm back. Yes, with that, let's move into Q&A. As I mentioned, please drop your questions into the Q&A section of the Zoom chat. We have people on our team who are helping answer those questions as well as service them. And then we also have some people who will be available to hop on to the Zoom to answer them live. But with that, let's go to the first question here. Does Make employ context from your entire Figma file and connected libraries, or just the frame that you pull in? I can answer this, or Holly, if you want to dive into that too.
Well, I think the simple answer is today, it's just the frame you paste into the prompt box. It cannot see the Figma file that the frame came from. But with all of these design system features that we are going to be building out, we're ensuring that Make has more and more ability to access or reference your libraries. So that will be coming with some of these features. Anything to add, Anna?
No, I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. Yeah. All right, next one. Does layer naming in the Figma file matter? Yes. So as I mentioned, as a best practice, we do recommend that you name your layers, especially if you're going to be in any follow-up prompts referring to specific aspects of your design that you want changed. If you refer to that thing by the layer name that you gave it, because as we mentioned, when you're pasting in a frame, Figma Make has access to all the information about that frame, whether it's layout, layer names, what colors you're using, that kind of thing. And so by naming your layers and referring to those things by their layer names, that automatically creates a shared language between yourself and Figma Make. Of course, though, you can always use the point and edit tool to specifically mark which thing you want updated in a follow-up prompt as well. So that can also help if you don't want to name your layers, but also we do have that AI beta feature where you can have Figma utilizing AI automatically rename your layers. So I would recommend giving that a try as a way to help save time on that. All right. Any tips or best practices for creating multi-page prototypes? Yes. So as we mentioned before, if you've when you're pasting designs into Figma Make, you can paste up to 3 frames. Of course, you can always paste in more frames in future prompts, so don't feel like you have to try to cram everything into the first one. But generally, we also try to recommend that, yeah, for instance, in like the World Peas mobile example, I did not paste in all those different screens and ask it to just build this app because it's just a lot that you're trying to ask it to do. Also, like, and it's going to make it it's going to make it less likely that the output I'm going to I'm going to get and make is going to align perfectly with my vision. And it's just partly because you don't want to overwhelm it. Also, if I'm asking it to build a lot, what's the likelihood that I'm going to invest in writing a prompt that has enough details to actually communicate what I want it to do? Probably not likely. Most of the time I'm pretty lazy. I'll try to use like a Figma Make like prompt generator help me with that because usually I don't want to write those things manually. So yes, generally we recommend if you've got multiple screens, prompt one screen at a time in separate prompts. It's also just going to make it a lot easier to make adjustments. So like if you're just having implement one screen, it's pretty easy to use like the point and edit tool and go into the code to make the adjustments that you want to. Those are going to be automatic in terms of the changes. Whereas when you're actually prompting Figma Make like through some kind of like text message, the thing you want to change, that naturally takes longer because it has to think about what you're trying to do versus me just going in and making the change myself. And I think just naturally when you try to have it build multiple screens, the likelihood that I wouldn't be able to achieve what I'm trying to change via point and edit or editing in the code is a lot lower. And so just think about like the amount of extra time it would take in having to write those follow-up prompts. I think too, when you're trying to create something that's really complicated, like if you're making a really complex dashboard that's got different like pie charts, bar charts, like different things that are interactive, um, there's going to be a lot of like detail that you should communicate, and it's hard to encompass all of that in a single prompt. And so, in cases where if you try to build a full screen and it's just like doesn't seem to be getting it, try to tackle things piece by piece. Maybe we're like, okay, let's first focus on just uploading the data, whether I have existing data that I wanted to use in my prototype, or if I wanted to just generate data following certain parameters I set. Then let's go into building this interactive bar chart. Then let's go into building this interactive like table. Like tackling it piece by piece can also be something worth trying if you're trying to get things done at once and it just doesn't seem to be working. I think a helpful way like to think about just when you're using AI in general is that it can't read your mind. It doesn't know what you're thinking, just like any other person. If you're trying to explain an idea to somebody who's like brand new to your team, has never worked on the product before, think about the kind of context that's important to give to them, and try to use that to think about how you need to go about prompting. So yeah, that's tips. Break things up. Try to use the point and edit when possible. Even for single screens that are really complicated, try to break that up into piece by piece. You can also always paste in links to nested frames. So if I have a full screen design, I could just paste in the designs for 2 sections that full screen and just have it implement those first. Um, yeah, anything I'm missing, Holly? Any tips you have for that?
Nope, that's great.
Okay, cool. All right, next question. Is Figma Make deterministic? I don't know, Holly, is this like
Yeah,
for
I
you?
can take this one.
Yeah.
The answer is no. Um, in the same way that large language models are not deterministic. I think the question, um, is asking like if I add a Figma frame, and the same prompt, will I get the same result every single time? And the answer is we cannot guarantee that you would get the same result every single time just because of the way that models work. However, we are trying to introduce more context and more constraints to the model with things like, adding a design does help. Adding specific prompts also helps to keep, if you want to keep your designs a little bit more constrained. And things like the design system features that we're talking about will also help, give the model more context so that it has kind of like a smaller band that it to play within. But the answer is no. It will never purely be deterministic.
Yeah, that reminds me too, for the first example I showed where I gave like a really short prompt. I was just like, create this interactive like projects screen from the Collabs web app. That's like a super short prompt. I didn't really give it any context on the functionality or what kind of interactivity I wanted added in. And I just gave it a link to the Figma design. So it's like each time that I've like tested out this prompt, I get different results because I'm not very specific in the kinds of things I'm trying to say. Um, so you can try to play this game where you see like, okay, I don't want to invest in like writing good, thorough prompt. I'm just going to see what the output looks like if I give it a design in a really short 1-line sentence. If it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you can always try it again because AI can be unpredictable and it can happen to guess like your intent better another time than a previous like attempt that you made. So if you want to, you can try to do that as a way to try to like get to the output that you want. If you really don't want to make any adjustments to your prompt, but usually like if it's not getting something, like if there's a specific interactions that I want that it for whatever reason didn't account for, or if there's certain that I don't want, um, I'll just see what missed and I'll just add those couple of details to my next prompt. And that'll usually fix it. So yeah, just a couple of tips there. Alrighty. You describe Make as an app/prototype maker. Is this the primary use case for Make? Are there others? If so, can you list them out? Holly, I guess I'll send that to you, but I can also fill in some things too.
Yeah, it's funny. I was literally just typing an answer to, I think, one of a related question. So, today we very much believe that Make is going to be primarily for a prototyping use case. And the reason for this is because, when in our UX research and talking to designers and PMs, like the number one thing that they tell us is that they really want to use these 0 to 1 app tools primarily for de-risking and validating ideas among team members, right? Like bringing a product idea to a meeting, like testing out a bunch of different interactions with the designer live, etc. And because, we're Figma and we live with your designs, and this is such a huge part of the design and product building workflow, we think that Make can start to serve that need really, really clearly right now. And only more so as we add more design system capabilities and the ability for you to bring makes into Figma design. However, we're keeping our ears open. We hear from a lot of you that you are interested in code fidelity. You're interested in developer handoff. Some of you are interested in using Make as a design collaborator and riffing with Make. And so I do think that all of those are clear possibilities and paths for Make. Really hoping to, as we continue to build out features, continuing to hear from you all on your feedback and how you want to use Make. And I think that we're growing and building really rapidly. And so our kind of, once we, I think, are better able to serve a prototyping use case, we'll definitely want to kind of look around and see how else we can, use this tool to provide value to you all. So in short, there are tons of other use cases for Make. We're already seeing people use it for, developer handoff. Some people are using it for little bits of front end code here or there. As you saw from Anna, people are using it to create JSON data or X or Y or Z for people. Some people are using it to riff on designs together with their teammates. But we're hoping to codify all of that a little bit more once we have a couple more months of learnings under our belt. Anything to add, Anna?
No, I think that like, yeah, that encompasses it all. All right, next question. How does Figma Make handle prompts that aren't very specific? Does it ask follow-up questions or offer suggestions? Holly, I think this probably could also help with the prompt helper that we're going to be bringing in. So maybe you can talk a bit about.
Yeah. Yeah. So we totally hear you that like even the prompts that I write to Make are not very specific. We as humans, just like I think Anna said it best, like the AIs can't read our minds. So as Anna mentioned, we are going to be releasing that AI prompt expander. You have to actually click that in the prompt bar in order for it to expand your prompt. But we are also thinking about having what we're calling like a conversation mode. We're exploring that right now too. So if you ask a follow-up question, basically Make talking back to you instead of just generating code. So the short answer is like, yes, we are working on a conversation mode where Make can chat back with you, talk with you, maybe riff on an idea before it starts generating.
Yeah, and we'll also make sure to follow up with the Figma Make GPT that Greg on my team created to help you with just generally writing better prompts. It'll ask you about like missing details that you haven't included. So that can be also just an interesting tool that we'll make sure to share a link to in the follow-up email. All right. How does privacy and security when publishing to a preview work? What if my design has sensitive information? Holly, I think this is a question for you.
Yeah. So we also got a lot of questions about previewing and publishing. So just want to make two things clear. Today in Make, if you want your Make to live on an external website, you can hit the publish button and it will take your Make and it will give it a URL that anyone in the world can access. Now, We know that that is not going to work for a lot of people. If you're an organization or you have sensitive information and you don't want to publish, a couple things. One, if your org has external sharing turned off, you will not be able to publish. But even for those of you who do have publishing enabled, there is a play button at the top of a make that will actually just take you to a preview tab. So it's going to be your prototype, but in a full screen preview tab. And you can share that URL with your coworkers, and that will respect all of the sharing and permissions that you have with any regular Figma file. So if you have it, share to spaghetti organization or something, you can share that full screen URL with your organization, and no one outside of your organization will be able to view it. So there is, in other words, an internal immersive preview URL that you can share for every makefile. We realize that today those two choices from external publish to internal preview might not be super clear. So we are going to be shipping some new IA changes that make it a lot more evident.
Awesome. Alrighty. Can Figma Make suggest a mobile design from a desktop design? I think I can speak from my personal experience, but Holly, feel free to jump in here too. So yeah, it will make certain assumptions. So like when you go to like preview something and you're resizing it down, I've had experiences where yes, Figma Make will try to naturally like shift things and resize the elements of my design to respond, whether I've reduced my preview to a mobile versus to a tablet versus to a desktop size. Naturally, though, it's always better to define those things. So what I've done in the past is I will have like, for instance, for like the collab dashboard, in my initial like prompt, I will say, right, like, create this interactive dashboard for the collab web app. And then for the 3 different frames that you can paste in, I will paste in the desktop, the tablet, and the mobile view, just so that it can reference those 3 things as my like core breakpoints for it. And of course, utilizing auto layout is going to also help make the responsiveness feel and look more how you're visioning it. So yeah, it's kind of like what we said before. The more details that you provide about the specific way that you're thinking about a design working, whether it's interactivity, whether it's responsivity, the more details that you're putting into the prompt, the better, whether that can be through text, whether it is through attaching designs for what that's going to look like at different breakpoints. It's always going to give you a better output than just seeing what it assumes, but it is going to assume things to some degree. Yeah, Holly, anything I'm missing here or any best practices?
Nope. I think just like everything Anna said around design hygiene and auto layout. I mean, Make is backed by Claude Sonnet 4. It's a very intelligent model, and it should theoretically be able to take your design and, like make changes to it, including mobile responsiveness. So you can use it to kind of creatively riff on how something should look in different dimensions. And in fact, a lot of our customers are using it for that exact use case.
Mhm. All right, we have 2 minutes left, so maybe this might be the last question. Does Figma Make include accessibility functionality? Holly, I believe that's for you.
Yeah. I responded to a couple questions about this. The answer is that today we have a pretty robust set of accessibility guidelines that we tell the model as part of the system prompt to try and encourage it to the best of our ability to adhere to accessibility kind of best practices. Now, as some of you mentioned in the comments and questions, it's not always perfect. So we know we need to keep improving it there. We might have to add way more guardrails to it. So heard you loud and clear. We're going to do that. And in parallel, one thing you can do today to kind of supplement that is to add in your prompts and eventually in your guidelines when we ship that feature in a few weeks. You can give it your accessibility best practices, and usually that yields pretty good results. So we're working on it, and there are ways that you can kind of boost that today via prompting.
Awesome. All right, we're basically at time. So I'm going to wrap things up. But as we mentioned, this is recorded. So check your email to look out for the recording. We will also share links to that tips on building a Figma Make article that we have, as well as the Figma Make prompt GPT. And yeah, we're going to continue to release more like educational things to help you all. Better learn how to utilize Figma Make and build prototypes with that. But yeah, until next time, hope you all are doing well. Hope you have a great time trying out Figma Make, and we'll see you in our next live stream.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.